Welcome, everyone, to Jennie and Laurie of Astropath. Before I say anything else, I really thank you all for being here. We've gotten a lot of new followers since our last video, so welcome, welcome. We're really happy to have you here. And we're going to talk today about the eclipses that are coming up here in September. We put out our September videos, watch those. This goes a little bit deeper into the eclipses themselves. Also, below this video, please subscribe, do all the things, share, all of that stuff. And you'll find information below here. Both Jennie and I do consultations. I also do recorded readings. If you're too busy to make an appointment, I can do a fully recorded reading for you. So check out that information about each of us below. I know Jennie's got some online classes coming up or workshops coming up, right, Jennie?
I do, and my first one is right between these eclipses on September 10th. It's like a astrology monthly.
Oh,
It's meant to be like just a drop-in class to just find out what the astrology is that's coming up. So you can sign up for that online. There'll be links below, and that'll just be an ongoing class every month. So that's the big one. There's a couple others on there. You can see those on the same page. So yeah.
great, great.
Mhm.
That's exciting. I hope
Yeah.
you get people clamoring at your door for those. Okay, so now what do we want to talk about? We're talking about eclipses. What are the dates? You want to throw those out here?
Yes, so the eclipses are September 7th. We have a lunar eclipse, and September 21st, we have a solar eclipse. Before we go all crazy, let me just briefly mention that we have eclipses in pairs twice a year. That means we have four eclipses every year, and they always come in this pair where there's like 2 weeks between them. So they're not really that unusual. And every time we have a pair, there's always a lunar and there's always a solar in the pair. So that's just how it works. The thing that makes them really unusual is just if you happen to be lucky enough to see them, if you're on the right part of the planet to see what the eclipse is happening, that's when it makes we have such a big deal about it. But they're really not that uncommon. And in astrology, we have different ways of talking about them. But just for now, just think of it simply as a pivot point.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any other things to add about the eclipses themselves?
Well, I guess I just always think the eclipses are really just moments in time where we are really focused on looking at where the nodal axis is moving. The nodal axis is always, the transiting nodal axis is always in a polarity of signs, and it takes about, what, a year and a half to move through, and it always, that's where eclipses happen. Eclipses happen when they're aligned with the nodal axis, and these pivot points really push us in the direction of moving toward the north node and away from the south node.
That's right. Yeah, and we'll explain a little bit more about the astronomy when we get into each individual chart. So yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, perfect. Great. Well, what other things we want to talk about? Oh, the polarity, Lori. We want
Oh,
to discuss the polarities.
yes.
So our polarity this time is the first one is a lunar eclipse in Pisces, and then Virgo. So, Lori, what do you think about with Pisces and Virgo?
Well, polarities are always fascinating to look at because they really are always two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways. And these are both mutable signs. They're always, the polarity always holds the same either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. And this is a mutable polarity. So, with Virgo and Pisces, they're both mutable, they're both adaptable. Virgo is very much about analysis and precision. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so it really takes on that. It's a earth sign. It's an earth sign ruled by Mercury. So it's about analysis and working in the space of details and precision. And Pisces, on the other hand, is ruled by Jupiter, and it is very emotionally expansive. It's a water sign. So yeah, emotional expansion. So these two, yeah, they look very different, but they are those two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I like how you brought up the similarities, first there too. And actually all four of the mutable signs, so we're talking about Pisces and Virgo, but also Gemini and Sagittarius, all four of them are concerned with um, healing really and teaching, those sorts of things. So there's really a lot about the healing arts, especially with Pisces, but also Virgo. I mean, Virgo is a helper sign. I mean, it is the sign of the person who really wants to help and can get organized enough, it's an earth sign, to kind of execute a plan, to set a plan and execute it and make it happen. So it has that really earthy, like, I'm going to go and help this person. That's what I always think about with Virgo. Like, I'm going to help this person. They need some food. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to buy the food. I'm going to go home. I'm going to cook. And then I'm going to bring it to them. So there's a lot of very structural, step by step things to do there. Whereas Pisces is more about the ideal and
Mm.
the much bigger picture of I want to alleviate suffering. I want to, just so it kind of has that helping thing too, but it's from this much broader perspective. And it might bring in things like spirituality and mysticism and the kind of magic. And it isn't about the sort of nuts and bolts. So really, when you think of the two of them together, you really have this wonderful picture of this ideal of how things could be, how you could alleviate suffering, how you could help people with grief, and then a plan of what to do about it. Exactly. And so it's interesting that this is what is being lit up right now.
I like thinking about Pisces as, the ability to work with what's intangible. And
Hmm.
that's so, the flip side to Virgo, which is so much about the detail oriented, real world practicality. Anyone who's listened to me for very long knows that I adore Virgo. Virgo's always yeah, like parents are not supposed to have favorite children, astrologers are not supposed to have favorite signs, but I just think Virgo is such a great and important sign to pay attention to that's often kind of discredited.
Yeah.
But yeah, these two together really do bring in that the ability to work on the detail in order to create the ideal vision.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I guess what else do I want to say about it? They're both yin signs, so that means they're both inward facing. With earth and water, those are both, I like to think of the two elements that respond to gravity.
Mm.
Like water is going to go down to the lowest point, but ultimately so is earth and create some kind of ground. So they're both these inward signs. So they really refer to an inward process to begin with, let alone when you start peppering in the meanings of eclipses and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the other first piece about it.
So
And
yeah, you want to, in thinking about these eclipses, you really want to pull out your chart and make sure you're really clear what houses these signs fall in. And I really would encourage you, if you did not watch our last video, go back and watch it. At least watch the part that is about your rising sign or your sun sign if you prefer to use that or if you don't know your rising sign. But we did a pretty deep dive in the September horoscope video about the period of time before and after the eclipse. And yeah, we did some really good conversation there that you're not going to want to miss.
yeah, let's definitely encourage you to
Yeah.
check those things out. Well, I guess I'll leave you with this thought too. The difference between Pisces and Virgo, or when you're thinking about them together, because that's really what we need to do with these eclipses to some degree. You really want to think about the balance between service and sacrifice, because
Oh, yeah.
Pisces really is the sacrifice, and Virgo is the service piece, and they play together. But because they're a polarity, they can be out of balance. One can kind of tug you too far in one direction. You can go too far in the direction of Pisces and sacrifice in certain cases, or you can get too far in the direction of Virgo and being too judgmental and stuck in the nuts and bolts to not be as effective or as kind as one could be. So those are two of my keywords: service and sacrifice.
I like that.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yes, let's move on. What's next?
Okay, let's start by looking at the picture of the first one, which is the lunar eclipse. Okay, so this is the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse. It's always going to be a full moon, September 7th and 2:09 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you adjust for your time zone. Okay. You want to talk a little bit about the astronomy before we get into the more symbolic meaning? Does that
Sure.
sound good?
Let's
Okay.
think about that.
Okay. Well, let's just take it from the top here. Let's talk about the conditions of what makes a lunar eclipse.
Mhm.
We're going to keep this simple. But number one, it's always going to happen at a full moon, which means that the sun and the moon are always going to be in the opposing zodiac sign. So that's condition one, is that it's full moon. Condition two, that is very important, is that they also must be in alignment from north to south. So in astrology, that's called contra-parallel. It means that they have to line up not only from east to west, but also from north to south. And that's what makes them get in each other's way, basically. And then the lunar eclipse is when the sun casts the shadow of the earth on the moon and it makes it this reddish color that you'll see back there. And so it's also called a blood moon. It sort of brings in, I kind of think of it as like, remember those old kind of velvety posters that you put
Oh
black
my
light
goodness.
on?
Yes,
It kind of makes me think of that. Like there's a light that's unusual, so you can see things you usually can't with a
right.
lunar eclipse. And then the other thing I'll say is it has to be conjunct the nodes. Doesn't have to be perfectly, it can be fairly out of orb. But in here, yeah, you'll see those nodes are at 18 degrees of Pisces and Virgo. So those are the nodes.
And if you see that in your birth chart, you know you were born at an eclipse.
Yes.
That's the other thing. You can always know if you were born at an eclipse by that,
Mm-hmm.
by how close
Uh,
the moon is.
what did I miss for the astronomy, Lori? Is there anything else to add?
I don't think so. You already covered the fact that we get four eclipses a year. They come in pairs, a lunar and a solar,
Mm-hmm.
and they are always in alignment with the nodes. So I think, yeah, I think you covered what we need to there.
Okay. Let me just say one thing about the nodes, which is the nodes are a point. They're not a thing. And that point refers to where the moon, as it orbits the Earth, intersects with the path of the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the Earth's rotation around the sun. So it's where those two pathways intersect. The bottom one is the south node, the top one is the north node. If you want more information about that, I actually do have a little video about it. But anyway, that you can find on our video channel. But I think that's all you need to know
The
about
other
that.
thing that people might want to know is that's easy to get confused about if you look at charts a lot is that the nodal axis moves in the opposite direction of the
Yeah.
planets because that can get confusing. When you're looking at the planets, you're going to always see that over the course of time, planets are going counterclockwise through the ecliptic. But when you are looking at the nodal axis, it's going in the opposite direction. Right now, they're between Pisces and Virgo. The next go round, which happens in approximately a year, the nodal axis is going to move into the polarity of Aquarius and Leo.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just
Perfect.
to
Thanks for bringing that up.
tell people all the geeky stuff they might need to
Yeah.
know.
It is important because it is confusing. You're like, wait, what? But yes, it is
Right.
in words. And
Yeah, I
that includes
remember
all the
early
top.
on trying to understand this stuff. It's like, what? Wait, what? How's that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that whole backwards moving of the nodal axis has to do with a much larger topic of the whole precession of the equinoxes. But that is a whole nother video and
Yes.
conversation. I think we've gotten enough of the astronomy in there. As far as astrology, number one that Lori and I really want to get across is make sure you've checked your own chart because these eclipses are going to be the most powerful if they connect on something very specific in your chart. So, in other words, if you have something, let's say between 12 and 18 degrees, somewhere like that, of Pisces, of Virgo, and maybe even Gemini and Sagittarius, this is going to be the kind of strongest impact, but especially that Pisces Virgo. So check your own chart. If you don't know, you can email us and we can see if we can look it up for you if you have a time of birth. But anyway, that's the thing to really take on board.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So for this eclipse, what are we anticipating? What are we thinking about other
Yeah, let's
than
break down the
these
chart.
areas of our lives?
Yeah. Yeah. So, number one is understanding where Pisces and Virgo is. And number two, take on board the fact you'll notice that the moon is conjunct the north node. So that's kind of the first part of this is the moon. It's a full moon. It's Pisces. So you want to think about the positive aspects of Pisces, the positive spectrum of Pisces. Pisces to me is that ability to have compassion, that ability to forgive, the recognition that everybody suffers. We all have suffering. We've all experienced pain. We all experience grief. And really understanding that everybody has that struggle. Everybody's had to deal with that at some point in their life. So Pisces really brings in these big picture things. And so at a lunar eclipse, the moon conjunct the north node is trying to move us into a direction of these positive traits: kindness, forgiveness, compassion. Yeah.
We always want to think about, the North Node is an area of growth. This is where we are growing. And, since let's see, the North Node has been in Pisces since January. So this is an area of a lot of growth. It'll be there for approximately another year. So really focusing, these eclipse points are points where we really get to see where that growth edge is. That's the pivot point, is pivoting you toward the growth of the North Node and the release of the South Node.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
It's interesting too, and I don't know if now is the time to bring it up, Jenny, but I think that we have to mention the fact that Saturn has just retrograded back into Pisces.
Mhm.
So Saturn, even though it's not conjunct this North Node eclipse, it is part of the story, and it also is really focusing our attention on that point where the North Node first came in back in January.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
what happened in January? I think there's stories underlying this that are very directly connected with our cultural moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking about, the dark side of Pisces, number one, I mean, deception,
Deception.
inflicting suffering on other people. And that is certainly something that began on another level in
In
January.
earnest. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, in earnest with
Yeah.
the election of Trump. So yeah, that brings in that. And I like how Saturn, it brings in this note of accountability. It brings in this note of structure. And it might not be very comfortable. I mean, the moon is fairly far away from Saturn, but it's impending. The moon is moving towards Saturn. So no matter what, the moon is going to meet with Saturn in the next maybe a little bit beyond 24 hours from this moment. So there's an impending sense of responsibility and impending accountability, and I don't know, like a meeting of a limit, like a hitting of a wall or a meeting of a limit that must happen. So it isn't just, I think about this, there's a lot of softness in this first eclipse, but nonetheless, like that wall isn't that far ahead, or that structure, or something concrete, some kind of reality isn't that far
Right.
ahead in
And
this.
it's interesting because thinking about Pisces as the necessity to work with what's intangible. But it's like as it approaches Saturn, and it's like having to take action on reality from an understanding of what's really hard to contain or understand. I don't even know if that made any sense. But
Oh,
there's,
Pisces.
yeah, there's something in that as we are approaching that point of accountability
Hmm.
and reality, like looking at the reality underneath what we've been bamboozled with. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, being bamboos.
bamboozled.
Well, and then also I don't want to we can still talk more. Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking about, so the big keynote here is that Jupiter's in a pretty nice trine with the North Node, and close enough to the moon. So this is really tight. Now, Jupiter is considered to be in a very beneficial position in Cancer. It likes to be in Cancer. It's considered to be exalted, meaning sort of crowned or really doing well, being able to be very effective here in Cancer. And in the trine with the moon, well, guess what? The moon is in Pisces, which is Jupiter's sign. So not only is the moon trine Jupiter, but it's also in mutual reception. So to me, this is what adds this amazing softness and kindness and nurturing and taking care of, and this idea or this desire to take care of, one's fellow humans, the people, both the people you care about and maybe even the people that you don't know, just the people that you see are struggling. So this is, it really brings this very nice kind of like, let's nurture each other, let's, help each other, let's be kind, let's forgive. How this plays out in your personal life, think about those, where do you really want to nurture, where do you want to be kind, on a personal level as well as in your neighborhood, your community, and the greater world. Yeah, and then Jupiter also sextiles the sun, presenting an opportunity to help with
Yeah,
that.
it's just, it really does feel like an expansion of kindness and you're really paying attention to the details as well, that the ability to see where you need to grow into more compassion and understanding.
Yeah.
And then we've got that interesting little square, which really adds the ability to, well, you said it earlier when we were talking about it, and I don't remember how you said it, but something about, just the ability to take action on what we're seeing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, putting that kindness into action. Not just, there's something with that Jupiter there. It could be like, oh, this is such a lovely thing. We're going to just go sit on the beach or, paint a beautiful picture, or have tea with our friends, and all is lovely. But Mars is like, no, you got to do something with
Mhm.
this understanding and this bigger picture and this kindness. You've got to take some action and do something with it, not just you know, paint a pretty picture. Not that there's anything wrong with painting a pretty picture, but
Yeah, and it's a very, and Mars is in cardinal Libra. I mean, and it's very much about something that brings balance,
yeah.
some kind of action that brings balance. I mean, that's making a pretty big statement, and I like it because it cuts through the trine can just be very inert and inactive, and it's lovely. It's like being held, which
Right.
is great. We need more being held and more restoring and more rejuvenating. These are things we do not emphasize in our culture. But at the same time, this Mars kind of cuts through and says, look, this can't just all be about you, or, you've got to lift above and do something that has a balance, some kind of a balancing impact. Or it might not just be something that's about you, but just it's an external action that must be
Mm.
acted on. It's in an air sign as well. So there's something about that. And the other thing that this picture paints to me is that with all that water, there's so much about intuition. And I feel like that part
Mm.
of this is about healing the aggravations, healing parts of yourself so that you can access your intuition and trust your intuition in a healthier way or in a stronger way. I think there's a lot about that. So the picture is kind of like, trust what is your gut instinct about what's going on right now and then take the action based on that. There's so much about this moon to me that is surrender. You don't have control over all of these things, but you do have control over how you act. You do have control over your healing, that you're taking steps to do that. It doesn't just happen because resting on your laurels. It happens because you make a decision and you take action. So that's kind of what it says to me overall.
And then I circled that 15-degree Leo Venus because I just think that's a such a beautiful position for Venus to be in. It's, the very mid degree of fixed signs are always, there's something special about that 15 degrees of each of the fixed signs that gives it a lot more power. And there really is something here about just the value of showing up and being a dramatic expression of what needs to be seen.
Yes. Yeah. And it's coming up to a sextile with that Mars as well. So it's really bringing this magnanimity to the whole situation and
Right.
this generosity that I really like. And I love it that it's at that 15-degree point of stability too. That really, I agree. That looks good.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like it really gives the action. Yeah, it's still got 5 degrees or whatever to get to that sextile, but it really does bring the action into a dramatic expression that can be seen.
Mm, mhm.
Libra might try to be a little overly polite, but Leo's like, no way, we're gonna show up and
Tell people about it.
right, right.
Yeah.
That's
Um, and then the other piece I just want to quickly mention is just the simple fact that Mercury here is the ruler of Virgo and it's in Virgo and it's before the sun and the node. So it's kind of holding down. I mean, this to me speaks to your mindset. Like part of this, like this picture is that you can train your mind. You can turn your mind onto what you want to turn onto. You have some flexibility here. You're not just pigeonholed into thinking a certain way. You can actually choose to think about things differently. And I think that's really important to this chart because overall, I think this is a pretty positive looking picture for this eclipse. I mean, I think it's overall a very a preparatory period for the second eclipse, which is way more intense, in
yeah.
my opinion. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to do the surrender, do the act of forgiveness, to,
And then fill
stop.
yourself up with that
Yeah.
Jupiter. Fill yourself up and get ready to
Yes.
take the action.
Yeah, like nourish. I think of that keyword of nourish for the
Yeah.
water. Nourish yourself. That means, eat well, sleep well, be surrounded by people you love. Like if you love water, go and sit by water, go sit by the ocean. Get in get on your paddleboard or in your kayak, or really settle into the magic of water, and let that fill you up exactly
Yeah.
before we move to the next eclipse.
Yeah. Are we ready to talk about the next eclipse?
I think so. Let me
I think,
just
this one really is. It's like pay attention to where you feel filled up and then pay attention to where you're being called to utilize that energy and do something with it.
Yeah, I love it.
I think
Okay,
that's really a lot in that. All right, let's look at the next one.
let's do it. Okay, so this is the solar eclipse. So we have a much different picture here. This is happening on September 21st. We have 3:54 Eastern time is the moment of the new moon. The eclipse itself is longer, but that's essentially what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's
Before we
supposed to be
jump,
like a really unusually long eclipse.
yeah, I think it said several hours. So
Which,
interesting.
I don't know. I haven't tracked these things enough to really have a full understanding of this, but what I've heard is if the longer an eclipse lasts, the longer its ultimate impact lasts, or
Hmm, interesting.
something
Makes
along
sense.
those lines.
Well, before we
Eclipses in general, don't they, we think of them as unfolding over the next 6 months.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're not like normal lunations
Right.
because they have more weight to them.
Yeah,
Uh
and you always, in general, with a new moon, you think of it as a time to plant a seed, but with an eclipse, you're not planting a seed at the eclipse. You're releasing something and paying attention more than anything, I think.
yeah. Well, let's talk just briefly, let's revisit the astronomy piece here.
Yes.
Just very quickly. So first of all, a solar eclipse is only going to occur in a new moon. It's going to occur when the sun and the moon are in the same sign. But they also, like the other one, they also have to be parallel.
Yeah.
So they're in the same designation north and south, not just east and west. They really have to line up. And of course, it means that they're going to be conjunct one of the nodes. So those are essentially the conditions of how you have a solar eclipse. Anything you want to add about that?
That's at 29 degrees. I think that
Yeah. So yeah, and here we see the solar eclipse is conjunct the south node, so that kind of brings in a different designation. But essentially, here we have a much more complicated picture. And you're right, starting with 29 degrees of Virgo, which is an inherently unstable degree in a sign that is already mutable and is prone to being unstable.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of instability that we're just starting right off with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's where I just want to remind us again. It was back in January that the node hit that 29 degrees. So it's a mirroring of that period of time as well.
Yeah. So look and see, do you have anything at 29 degrees of mutable signs? Or do you have something at like 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, which is Aries and Cancer and Libra, and Capricorn? So, but take a look first because you're gonna want to understand if that's part of the picture here for you personally.
It's interesting because this does happen right there at that 29-degree point, which is so unstable. And then it immediately moves to 0 degrees Libra, which is one of the cardinal points, which is one of the strongest points. So it goes from this instability into this very powerful place. And in this chart, right after this eclipse, we go into a whole different story. But
Yeah, I mean,
I'm rushing ahead.
well, there's no, I mean, this picture in general, Lori and I were talking about before, it really is that bow being drawn back. And
Yes.
there's an incredible amount of tension in this chart. We made our September horoscopes video a lot about essentially this chart, the lead into this chart and the go out. So we're going to revisit that a little bit here. But if you want a personal delineation, please go to that video because you'll get it for your rising sign or your sun sign.
Yeah.
But first of all, the other thing too is like 29 degrees of Virgo, and you mentioned is very close to the cardinal point. That's very public. So this solar eclipse is something we're going to see in the public eye very strongly. That is the first part of this.
Yeah.
The other thing is now they're exactly opposite from Saturn. So
Oh,
now you
that's what I meant.
cannot avoid the the power of Saturn here. Saturn is the power of no. Saturn is the boundary, the limit, the stop you dead in your tracks. Saturn will not hesitate to say no. So there's
Right.
a negation that's happening here with this eclipse that I think is part of it. There's something that's being unavoidable. There's something absolutely unavoidable in this chart.
That reality. We see that reality. Saturn's just recently moved back into Pisces. We really are needing to examine our understanding of what's going on, the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on a personal level, like Saturn going back into Pisces to me is this like revisit of how am I doing with compassion? What does that even mean to me? What am I, what spiritual practices can support me in my understanding of the world right now? Or, where am I still building my container for magic? I remember you and I
Oh,
talked a lot
yeah.
about that, something that I really like that you came up with, that container for magic. So there's something about the dream here, in that being couched in reality, something that is trying to be brought into fruition. And so think about what that is in your own life. And again, that analogy of the bow being drawn back, there's just so much tension here about something that wants to be brought into some kind of real and touchable, tangible place.
Mhm.
So, mhm.
Yeah.
What
But this,
else?
okay, you go ahead.
That's right. I guess let's talk a little bit about how it's conjunct the South Node and what that brings.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
South Node is really a point that refers to the past. It's a point that refers to something that needs to be grown beyond. So the South Node here is really saying to me something about the more difficult parts of Virgo. We talked a lot about this in that other video.
Mm.
The need to release perfectionism, the need to understand if you're being really hypercritical or very judgmental, either of yourself or other people or both. Virgo can be extremely discerning, but taken to the nth degree, it can be extremely harsh and cutting, and really just cut, right to the chase. And so there's something about that. Is there a harshness here that needs to be released? Is there a need to feel very critical of those around you, or yourself? So I think that's a big piece of this one too, letting
Yeah.
go of that.
Yeah, and again, look at your chart. Where is Virgo in your chart? What perfectionism, what high expectation, unreasonably high expectations do you need to release in that area of your life? And again, we will have a link below here to go to that video that we did a deep dive into this for every sign. So make sure you watch that.
And then some of the other reasons that this chart's tense, like what do you want to talk about next, Lori?
Well, we're at 29 degrees Virgo, both the sun and the moon. They're both going to be in Libra very, very, very soon, right? So, what happens as soon as they go into Libra? We have a whole new storyline. First of all, the sun and moon will move in there and be right at that Aries point, that cardinal point that is so public and so significant. And as soon as they get there, they are forming a trine to Uranus and a trine to Pluto and an opposition to Neptune. Now, those are the three outer planets. Those are the planets that are not personal. They are collective. They are about the bigger cultural storylines that are going on. This is a point of a big pivot point. This is huge.
Yeah.
It really is, isn't it? This feels like, wow.
And this will be the third time, too, that this is being triggered, this configuration.
Right.
The first time was back in August, August 6th through 10th. Mars went into Libra, did the same thing, opposed those two planets, trying the other two. Then Mercury, just a few days before this, went into Libra, opposed, well, first it opposed Saturn, then it went into Libra, opposed Neptune, trying the other two. Now the sun is doing it, and the moon will be, moon is going to do it first, but very closely tied together.
Yeah.
So there's a pattern being repeated here. There's a pattern that's pinging these outer planets that's, bringing in this opposition, which is the clarity. It's up against late Pisces and early Aries. So there's something here, and that's a threshold right there. That's a threshold of something coming into being, something being born. I mean, Pisces to Aries is something being born. So you've got that being pinged again, and then the trine to the outer planets. So this is saying to me, this says something has to change. Things need to change, and it's going to keep changing. And if you look at the really long view, it's evolving. In the short term, there's destruction, there's difficulty, there's challenge, but there's also some positives. We're waking up,
Yeah.
that we're transforming things. We're seeing things that we haven't been able to see before. And this eclipse bringing something out of the dark. I mean,
And
that's what the eclipse does.
yeah, and because the two eclipses, we're looking at them separately, but they are a pair. They
Yeah.
come together. And I think about the lunar eclipse, that trine between what was it? I'm all of a sudden confused. Jupiter and what
And
was
yeah, the moon.
it was the moon. Yeah, it was the eclipse and Jupiter. Okay. So
Yeah.
that trine, to me, that brings in the hope. And okay,
Yeah.
so we tap into the hope. The Mars squaring was like taking action on that hope, on that understanding. And this is really bringing it the next step into this pattern with all of the outer planets, where what actions are taken, what happens at this pivot point of these eclipses
Yeah.
is huge. It changes the entire storyline. And
Yeah.
I feel like leaning back on that original hope at the lunar eclipse is I feel like that's almost the key to me with how this is going to be able to play out in a positive way for us.
Yes. And and again, I know we've mentioned it a lot, but in the video we talked a lot about the fact, to second what you're saying, Lori, to kind of add more weight to that, we have Venus squaring Uranus, which is an intense thing.
Right.
That's right before the eclipse, Venus and Uranus square. Now that's intense, that's anxiety provoking, but the takeaway from that was about getting in touch with the kindness, waking up to the importance of kindness, to self and others. So that's what we are going into this eclipse with. That square happens, I think, a couple days before. Then we go into this eclipse, which is the pivot point, and then the sun moves into Libra and Mars moves into Scorpio and squares Pluto. So that's the arrow being loose to me. That's
Right.
that is the target.
Yeah.
There, the arrow gets loosed when Mars is so relieved to get out of Libra. It's unstable as well. It's also 29 degrees, so it's unstable in
Yeah.
Libra. It doesn't like to be in Libra. It's had enough, and it gets to go into its own sign of Scorpio, where it can be piercing,
Right. Right.
and be totally in line with the truth. And
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
it squares Pluto.
Yeah,
right? Which is
that's a
fierce.
powerful point.
Yeah.
Mars moving in there, right in the midst of all of this. Mars moving into its own sign. It's like, yeah, I am going to, Mars in its own sign, whether it be Aries or Scorpio, just gets what it wants. It's like, "Rrr." The other thing too is I know we talked in the lunar eclipse when we talked about Venus being at that 15 degrees of Leo, and now here it is in Virgo. It's like all that showiness of that it brought in Leo is now gone into this really practical space where it can actually get something done besides get our attention and be beautiful.
Yes. But it's not easy because Virgo is under Venus and Virgo is under so much pressure, and Venus struggles a bit in Virgo because it can get too into the minutia. It's not a very
Yeah,
comfortable territory for it. Even though you can see where they come together,
yeah,
there's a positivity where they come together, but it's not very easy, especially because it's entering the sign where you've got the South Node, and then this
right.
this solar eclipse happening. So there's a
Yeah,
little bit
so
there to reach, but it's worthwhile.
yeah, and part of its practical ability and discomfort in there can help us to think about that release that's necessary.
Mm,
The whole thing with that South Node in Virgo is releasing that demand for perfectionism or whatever.
yeah.
And Venus being uncomfortable is like, oh, why am I so uncomfortable? Well, it's because I'm trying to make things be too proper.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I think it's social perfectionism. It's not because of Venus. It's not the perfectionism of sitting and trying to fuss over the details of something you're making. It's being socially perfect, like, oh, I can't say that thing to that person, or I might not agree with that person at all, but I feel a lot of empathy for them right now, and I don't know how to say it because they're going to take it the wrong way. It's kind of like releasing that and just going, releasing that social perfectionism and saying, screw it, I'm just going to extend some help. This person, I may not agree with my neighbor at all, or I may not, or whatever, but I'm going to help,
Right,
or at least offer to help.
right,
Right.
right.
So, and then we talked in previously too about how Venus, once Mars moves into Scorpio, well, Venus and Mars have already sextile. I want to make that clear. They already were in a sextile before this all happened when Venus is still in Leo. But once Mars goes into Scorpio, they still have a rapport because now you've got Venus and Virgo and Mars and Scorpio. There's the two yin signs. They can talk to each other. So that's where Venus can transmit those lessons over to Mars as Mars does its like act of being piercingly correct or
Right.
piercingly truthful.
And squaring Pluto. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, we did a really pretty deep dive into this for every sign. Please watch that
Yeah.
video for yourself. Yeah, there's a lot of really good information that will help you get through this pretty intense eclipse season.
Yeah. Do you want to, and then we've just one more thing to share with you all, and we'll talk about the pair together. So, let's see here. Let's move on to our final slide here. So this is just a summary. Got our lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Pisces. This is a moon conjunct the North Node. So what we're doing is we're instilling the new behavior. This is the Pisces, the positives of Pisces, the softness, the kindness, the compassion, so on and so forth. You're doing that, but you're having to let go of something that's held you up. You're having to let go of some past inability to do that, whatever
And
that
you
means.
have to understand it before you can let go of it. I just want to add that
Yeah.
you can't let go of something that you have never grappled with or understood. So look at this in your own chart. What is it from the past that you have grappled with, that you have struggled with, that you know you need to, yeah,
Mm.
release in some way? Or,
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to share any personal
uh,
revelations about that, just brief ones, but for me, I just because I think it's helpful, just to share
yeah,
just
yeah.
really briefly. I'm getting these classes out here. I'm stepping into this, I really want to teach and I'm doing more and I am doing more of it. but I have some hangups about it because I come from a family where there's all these things that go along with this idea of teaching, that you have to be a certain way, you have to be of a certain type of thing that you're teaching, you have to be of a certain intelligence to be able to impart this wisdom, and I'm just needing to like let that go, let the comparison go of family members, that I have this comparison about how I'm supposed to do it, and then just step forward into what I have to offer people. So I know that that's what it is for me. Mhm.
Yeah, that eclipse, that Pisces is in my seventh house. This is so much. It's very clear to me how this is related to my past relationships, my expectations of myself, my yeah, my ideal vision of what relationship is gonna supposed to be and all of that. There's a lot of complexity in that storyline in my life. And at this advanced age, I have learned a lot. Let's put it that way. And yeah, I mean, this is really very relevant. This is very, very relevant for me personally.
Yeah. So process that for yourself, consider where the first one is hitting you, and then look at the second one, the part two. I mean, these are always a part one, part two, and one might be stronger for you than the other because of what you have in your own chart placements, but nonetheless they're still a pair, and they're still lighting up some part of your life. And so we have that solar eclipse 29 Virgo, but this one is, as we mentioned, it's the sun and the moon are conjunct the south node. So this is the need to really dig into what is lying in the shadow space, what is hidden from you, what is unconscious, what is the thing that you don't know, that comes out as judgment, that comes out as criticism, that comes out as the harshness, the more negative components of Virgo. What do you need to release in order to embrace the pivot point that this solar eclipse represents in Virgo, that's going to let you do something different in that area of your life.
It's
Mhm.
beautiful. You can watch these things in different layers. You can watch how it's playing out in your own individual life by knowing the houses that it falls in. You can watch it in the news cycle and see what's happening in our world and pray for the best.
Yeah, and I feel like just to complete the kind of cycle here, like for me, this one is falling in my third house of writing. So for me, it's just simply lighting up the link between the writing and the teaching and how they go together. And there's just, to just keep writing, to keep moving forwards and keep releasing, the need for my writing to look a certain way or be a certain way. But just to keep writing my newsletter and then start putting some other work out there, some more personal work. So I know that's what it is for me.
Yeah. And, I've got Virgo rising and that perfectionism, that idea that I have to be perfect in order to create this ideal view of a relationship. Releasing that expectation of myself is it's a big deal. It's a big thing. And it really, these things are so important for all of us. Wherever we hold Virgo, our expectations are generally pretty over the top. And
Yeah.
wherever we hold Pisces, our dreams are very big.
Mm.
And we really need to balance those things and be able to, good enough is good enough. And a dream doesn't have to be the shiniest thing in the world to be very worthwhile.
I mean, as we're talking too, Lori, I'm just reflecting on, like, in a nutshell, I think that these two pivot points on the personal level are really just about bringing in more kindness, bringing in more understanding, doing your own healing work so that you're more available for what's happening with other people, and asking yourself how you can be of help, how you can support other people, because we all need it from time to time. And I think that in total, that's what this is saying, is making a change in this part of your life, and adopting that sort of attitude, no matter how hard it is. So,
This is great. Thank you, Jenny. I've really enjoyed this conversation a lot. Yeah. So
thank
thank
you,
you.
Lori.
And we will thank you, all of you out there, all of our new followers. Thank you for being here. Please continue to follow us, share us with people that might be interested as well. And we will make more videos as time progresses.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.